Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the Futurama Simpsons crossover. The evil brain spawn have a new plot to destroy Earth, with only the Planet Express crew to stop them. So their minds get dumped in a Simpsons comic book. With the team separated and suffering memory loss, things look dire as Fry is locked inside Springfield Elementary, Nibbler is incapacitated, Farnsworth remanded to the retirement castle, and Bender is getting drunk. But that last one isn't all that surprising, is it? The cover sees Bart and Fry skateboarding. Well, soaring. Skate soaring? Above their friends and family being chased by, we presume, Kang, Kodos, and some other Rigelian. We get 2 pages of recap for anyone that, for whatever reason, may be starting with the second half of a 2-part story, or is somehow blanking on what happened previously. We formally begin with Moe throwing Bender out of the bar for getting a little too familiar with the love testing machine. Homer walks with him, wearing a red coat I've never seen him wear in the show, unless it's one he wore in high school or something, when local petty thug Snake leaps out to mug them at knife point. And I love this silent panel of Bender just peering closely at him, as if to say, "You don't know who you're messing with." Which is saying something, because with the amnesia, neither does our favorite beer-swilling bot. A short time later, it's made clear he not only overpowered the thief, but took his snake tattoo for himself. Not a trace of skin or blood to be found. That's precision work right there. Also, ow! Homer's concerned that his new friend doesn't have a place to stay, so gets him one. At the retirement home, Farnsworth is swapping outlandish invention stories with Abraham Simpson, when they're overheard by Professor Frink, who's visiting his own dad, who looks nothing like the guy in that Treehouse of Horror episode. I bet he doesn't even sound like Jerry Lewis. Mostly because this is in print, but that's beside the point. I think. Frink asks to sign this new geezer out of the home, believing him to be incredibly intelligent, but the nurse informs him that he can only be signed out by family or a legal guardian. Being neither, Frinky activates a robot that busts in, and soon they're in the nerd's car. Because my robot may have artificial intelligence, but it's got real power of attorney, boy. I bet it comes in handy when he gets arrested for kidnapping the elderly. So when Homer said he was getting Bender a place to stay, he of course meant Ned Flanders' place. Being a good Christian, he was all too happy to be of service, letting the future bot sleep in the basement. But when he brings a warm milk smoothie to help him sleep, he sees the Meccano Man filling up his jukebox and passes out.
Well, that's sicker than usual.
Which is Bender's cue to cheese it. We go to the Springfield Country Club, where Zoidberg is coveting the buffet and threatening to kill anyone who tries to take it from him. I find your use of death threats so refreshing. People claim they're not PC anymore. Note to self. Path to success threatening billionaires? At a table for the non-rich people, Hermes shows a shaker of spices he uses on his food, shaped like Mom, the villainous industrialist from his era, and the sight of an old despotic business woman stirs confusing feelings within Smithers.
This better not awaken anything in me.
Mr. Burns starts choking, and instead of the Heimlich maneuver, Zoidberg, believing he's a doctor for some reason, has a better idea, sitting his patient in a punch bowl and throwing in a plugged-in toaster, delivering a mighty zap. And not Brannigan. While others are appalled, it not only works, but Monty decides to make the lobster his personal physician as thanks for saving his life. The following day, as class resumes at Springfield Elementary, Fry, who was stuck overnight and had to subsist on wax lips,
I thought you lived at the school.
Proves to Bart he's telling the truth about being from the future and trapped in a comic, by showing his reprinted copy of the issue therein. Also, Bart's shirt changes color again, but I had to edit that panel out. Anyway, he shows how the story is altered because his friends have been pulled into it, and hopes this will convince the lad to help. Bart asks why he doesn't just look further into the comic to see where they are, and Fry smacks himself with a dough for not thinking of that sooner. I mean, if super smart space brains needed thousands of years before accidentally realizing a more efficient way of trapping their enemies in literature, I don't think Phil should be that embarrassed since, he's got that brain thing. So the two begin their search, flying across Springfield on skateboards thanks to some anti-gravity chewing gum Fry had with him. At the power plant, Hermes is admiring Smithers' filing system while Zoidberg enjoys some caviar. then accidentally sneezes some onto the bureaucrat. This enrages Hermes enough to throttle his not friend, which reminds them of who they are, where they come from, and when. Observed on a monitor by Mr. Burns, he's intrigued by these people from the future and has some hired goons secure them somewhere to discuss their time traveling later. When Hermes asks Smithers for help, the toady laments that he can't disobey his boss, a work ethic that Conrad actually respects. We go to the Simpsons' house, specifically Lisa's room, despite class having been in session earlier, but maybe it's hours later, I don't know. And she's apparently invited Leela over. I guess she could have been so impressed with her giving those bullies a taste of their own medicine that she figured, hey, why not let this unvetted stranger that claimed to be a school counselor visit your house? Again, isn't she supposed to be the smart one? She complains about how despite her good grades, her brother gets all the attention. Leela's still foggy about her own childhood as an orphan, but feels she might have liked having a family like Lisa's, even if they drive her insane. But if the girl isn't given the attention, she's got to take it, and when the need arises, she'll find her inner hero. Lisa plays a tune on her sax, which causes the Cyclops to get emotional, tears streaming down the middle of her face, strangely enough. But before the 8-year-old can inquire about this further, they're interrupted by Marge, Maggie, and the new baby walking in. While Mrs. Simpson doesn't have much of a reaction to a purple-haired stranger in her daughter's room, Leela and Nibbler's memories are restored at the sight of each other. To avoid any lengthy exposition, the little caped alien explains the situation and restores the rest of the crew's memory via a mass mind meld. Not to be confused with a mind meld mass, a religious service that some Vulcan clerics keep campaigning for to make their church services last an hour in the mental realm, but only 5 minutes in real time. Fry and Bart fly in with information the girls already know, as Homer arrives to tell them that Flanders' jukebox got knocked up. But don't worry, Bender plans to make an honest woman out of it. After Nibbler does some more telepathic fill-in, he senses danger at the nuclear plant. To avoid heavy traffic, Fry gives Homer the last stick of anti-gravity gum, and the Simpsons' trusty vehicle is flying like a DeLorean.
Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
They get to a good altitude when Homer spits out the gum after it loses its flavor, despite being told 7 times it was the only thing keeping them afloat. And now they're plummeting to their deaths. Fortunately, they're saved when they land on the Duff blimp. Oh, beer, you're always there when I need you.
To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Unfortunately, Bender lights a celebratory stogie, igniting the craft and sending them falling again. And as for the pilot, I can see his parachute. He's okay. I didn't expect to be referencing old-school dub Tien Shinhan twice in one season, but here we are. Good thing Professors Frink and Farnsworth were nearby with a rocket cycle and large magnet to save them. They're headed to the power plant too, likely because of Nibbler's psychic communique, but with the added weight, they need to ditch a couple passengers, which end up being Fry and Lisa. This is as good a time as any for him to show off his holophoner, a future instrument that projects a hologram when played correctly. He suggests checking out page 14's editor's note for more information, so demonstrates how it works, creating a likeness of the young prodigy. It's crude, but Lisa's taking it better than she did that caricature of her on roller skates, at least. Apparently picking up Scruffy, the janitor, along the way, they arrive at the lower levels of the plant, where Hermes is tied to a chair and Zoidberg has been strung up above an enormous barrel of radioactive goo. Burns threatening to dunk him if he's not taken to the world of tomorrow! The profs have created a device that may be able to break the barrier trapping the Planet Express crew, but Monty can't go along since he's a fictional character. While Bart confirms this by showing off Fry's comic book, the billionaire doesn't care, only wanting a new world to conquer since he's had his way with Springfield.
Phrasing.
Farnsworth relents, handing the invention over to the young punk, only for Smithers to cartwheel by and snag it mid-handoff, then ripping off his face to reveal Amy Wong, with her physique under the clothes changing accordingly.
A woman. I'm scared.
We haven't seen her since the gang disappeared in Book 1, but she regained her memories after looking at her day planner, and having watched every episode of The Simpsons, apparently, she was certain Mr. Burns would eventually enact some kind of evil plot. I guess she ignored all the episodes where the villain was Sideshow Bob, Fat Tony, a one-off character, or someone voiced by a celebrity guest star, or anyone other than Burnsy.
And just look how happy he is.
She knocked Smithers out, tied him up in a closet, and posed as him using his clothes and some makeup, waiting for Burns to make his move. Everyone applauds her ingenuity until Burns cartwheels by and takes the device, revealed to have been Smithers, whose physique also changes, who also knows a thing or two about makeup and corsets, and, thanks to 3 years of assisting professional illusionists, undoing knots. No explanation on how they managed to precisely mimic the right voices, but since this is all in text, maybe we're not supposed to think about it that much. Really got their Mission Impossible 2 and their future sons here. He tosses the machine to the real Mr. Burns, who is nearby in a swiveling surprise chair. Before he can press that button, 3 Rigelians arrive, claiming to be the Galactic Council, demanding he drop the device or face citywide destruction. Smithers scoops up his boss and they flee to the escape pod, without the coveted gizmo. The aliens turn out to be holophoner projections created by Lisa, who proved a natural talent with the instrument, and Fry using a bullhorn to provide the voices. "You saved us, Lisa! See, you really are a hero!" Was that supposed to be her arc? A surprise ruse to foil the villain feels like a far cry from standing up to bullies or dealing with family neglect. Homer wants to be a hero too, so tries freeing Zoidberg, only to mistakenly drop him into the ooze. The Lobster Man emerges, mutated into a blonde, muscular human, and figures he must be horribly ugly with the way Amy, Marge, and Leela are all drooling with disgust. And thus Chris Hemsworth was born. Frink thinks the device needs more research before it's used, but Farnsworth says that with the comic almost over, the crew needs to escape now or be trapped forever. He turns it on, and it causes the panel to tear. Rather, the fabric of this reality, which further causes the physical comic to rip as well. As the Brainspawn are gathering the long boxes to take to Earth and begin their plan, one of them remarks how the issue is now less than mint condition, as the grading suggests. The living nerd planet has a strict rule about misgraded comics: death, using some kind of energy power to easily destroy the Brainspawn, as well as the Diamond Tough barrier. Now able to return home, the Simpsons and the Planet Express crew say goodbye, the latter's minds leaving the tome, and positing the sad, obvious, and forced question of any ironic twist-style consequences of weakening the barrier between their reality and the realm of comics. So the story ends on New York, where various Springfield residents are interacting with Futurama's supporting cast, which may not really be an ironic twist, but as Fry remarks, would make a really cool 2-page spread. That was the Futurama/Simpsons Infinitely Secret Crossover Crisis, and I really enjoyed it. I've read precisely one Simpsons comic, one my brother owned, and I remember thinking it didn't really read like, say, an episode of the show. That was when I was a kid, so maybe I would feel differently if I reread it now. But this really felt like it could be an actual episode of Futurama. The dialogue and interactions of Bender, Leela, and the crew felt totally in character. So much so that if you told me this was a straight adaptation from the series, I could have believed it. Though perhaps it helps that I am a fan of Futurama, have seen all the episodes, some multiple times, and can at least imagine the cadence, tone, etc. that the voice actors might put into their delivery. Not that that isn't possible with the Simpsons dialogue, but to me at least, the Plan X crew stood out more. The premise of the crossover is very clever, using a fairly convoluted but believable scheme that forces the two series to interact, despite The Simpsons being established as a fictional series in Futurama's reality. Though Futurama is also established as fictional in The Simpsons reality. Maybe the issue where Snowball 2 runs for mayor exists in a pocket dimension in the multiverse where that isn't the case, since no one goes up to Fry or Bender asking for an autograph. I'll admit I'm not sure how I feel about how the problem gets resolved. It feels very Deus Ex Machina for the nerd planet to suddenly eliminate the mighty evil space brains and the indestructible diamond sealant in one fell stroke, like he could have done it at any time. But it is kind of funny that all this madness was going on, and he only acted because something in his collection was harmed. If one wanted to get nitpicky, and it's my show, so my prerogative, if the crew's minds are what's transported into the original comic, why did Fry have his reprint with him? Unless he memorized the book, it can only be his memory of it that he can show Bart or the others, and maybe feature alterations to the narrative made directly by him. But to get technical, while Bart's idea to find his friends by skipping ahead sounds plausible, it might not work if the comic is an extension of Fry's mind or memory, since he doesn't know what, say, Farnsworth or Amy were up to, meaning... Nerd! Yeah, there are a couple of plot holes, mostly if you want to take the comedic premise seriously. Though you have to admit, Nibbler backing up into the path of that giant yarn ball was a bit convenient. Wouldn't it have been funnier if he stressed the importance of avoiding distraction, only to be drawn by the sight of the yarn ball, jump on it, which knocks Quimby over, and the little guy falls on his three-eyed head? But hey, your mileage may vary. Some can excuse stuff like that because this is just a fun crossover story that doesn't need meticulous, realistic detail to work. So some can brush off the timey-wimey weirdness of there being an electoral debate that kids are attending before going to school, as well as Edna Krabappel being there despite supposedly having food poisoning, or how some points in the story have a very uncertain passage of time.
Wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey.
It seemed a little unfocused where Lisa was concerned, where she meets Leela after being overpowered by bullies, complains that she's overlooked, then it ends on her being the hero. None of these moments are bad in and of themselves, but they don't seem to meld very well into a singular arc. If it's supposed to be about her defending herself, that's not really what she does with the holophoner. She does technically get recognized, but they don't give it a lot of time or focus before the crew has to skedaddle. The art is really good. No surprise that it captures the look of the shows so well. And the biggest mistake is how Bart's shirt just randomly changes color a couple of times in each installment. Well, not mistakes, really. I just personally found Homer's jacket weird since I've never seen him wear that before, but hey, maybe it was more common in Bongo comics. And for some reason they had Ned Flanders wearing what looks like a woman's nightgown. Maybe it's supposed to be a joke about him being a panty waste, since he's often so welcoming and kind of a doormat when Homer makes a demand of him, but I find it more peculiar than funny. Almost like the gag is, this guy is super nice and accommodating to strangers. What a sissy! And yet, opening his home to someone that needs a place to crash is the most Christian thing Flanders can do, especially how some episodes have portrayed him over the last 20-odd years. You could try applying to be one of their writers. I mean, with your references. There are also a lot of one-off Simpsons characters in the background throughout, from the orphan Peppy to those snobby socialites that Marge was trying to impress, on top of the usual denizens of Springfield up to 2002 or so. They're actually really fun Easter eggs for the savvy viewer, and to make the final two-page spread all the more entertaining. While one might have mixed feelings about these two shows as they've endured and changed over the years, the story combines them when one was fairly young and the other was still able to garner laughs, and does so very well. It may not be perfect and could be mildly improved with a few tweaks, but it's still funny, outlandish, and a little preposterous at times, but never off-putting. Fans of either shows should give this a look, if only for the humor I had to leave out. That does it for this season, folks. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll pick back up in 2025. In the meantime, being a cartoon for the past couple years, I'm going to see if I, too, can jump into comic books and mess around with a story. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.